And good morning, everyone. Hey guys, it's time for another episode of Jeep Chronicles. However, I'm doing it from a different Jeep today. My Jeep was getting service yesterday, be ready today, so I'm doing it from a Jeep Compass. Tell you what, this thing burns a lot less gas. I may be interested in getting a used one like this to do my deliveries. But nevertheless, we're going to continue on with Jeep Chronicles. So, many of you who follow me know that my Jeep Chronicles are 90% of the time about health topics, sometimes current events, sometimes biblical. Today is going to be biblical. Now, I want you guys to follow me real closely here. It's because we're going to give some understanding, according to the book, the Bible, of what a specific event that's recorded. Today's event that we're going to discuss hopefully should bring some light instead of people guessing on what this could be or hypothesizing why this happened when the scriptures itself tells us what happened. A lot of times we try to attribute a lot of things Christ did as in forgiveness. Although Christ did teach a lot about forgiveness and the love of the brotherhood, some of these stories, however, don't pertain or is used for that purpose. Instead, it's used to give you understanding on what Christ's biggest argument was with a lot of the Pharisees. So, today we're going to discuss John chapter 8, where the woman who was found in adultery. I've heard a lot of pastors, I've heard a lot of Christians try to break that down, but with their own understanding instead of letting the book explain itself. And what I'm about to do is going to be so easy through the Spirit of the Most High in Christ that you guys should receive it. First, we got to understand, I got my King James Bible here. I don't care what, Bible is your preference. They're all going to say the same. Some things are just a little more easier for a lot of you to understand. We must first understand a simple thing about Christ. In order to understand John 8, about the woman accused of adultery, I'm going to bring you to Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. But when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, born under the law, to redeem them that were under the law. Notice how it says, he was sent forth his Son, made of a woman, born under the law. Now, why would I read that first? Because we have to establish a precedence here. Christ was born under the Levitical priesthood laws. Therefore, he had to keep the laws. Christ was a Jew from the tribe of Judah who adhered and taught that you must keep the laws of Moses. Remember that, because it's going to make you understand John chapter 8 a little better. So now that we understand Jesus is under the law, and he kept the law, there's an event here that happens in John chapter 8 about the woman. And let's see, remember, Jesus is born under the law. Christ's biggest argument a lot of time was the Pharisees, is because they were in charge of sitting in Moses' seat, which is to not only teach the law, but follow the law themselves, but they didn't do it. They didn't keep the law. So Christ is expounding on what the law actually means. Now, the big event that they kept getting, going back and forth with, is Christ is simply explaining to them what they already knew, that the Messiah that was foretold to come would be perfect in the law, according to his judgments, and keeping them. Keep that in mind. That's what's stated in the law, that the Messiah would not only keep the laws perfect, but he would judge according to the law. So now, we established that. Let's go here to the book of John, chapter 8. We'll start at verse 1. Jesus went on to Mount Olives, and early in the morning he came again to the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down, and he taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. What sayest thou? They said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger he wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin amongst you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And when they heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and a woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted himself, and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thy accusers? Have no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. I've heard people teach that Jesus forgave her. Nowhere in this passage does it say anything about forgiveness. And it shouldn't, because this point of this story that's recorded is not about forgiveness at all. It's about, remember, let's look at verse 6. This they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. What were they wanting to accuse of Christ? What are they tempting Christ with? He just tells you in verse 4 or 5. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. What sayest thou? They wanted to see if he was going to judge her according to the laws of Moses. So they tempted him by bringing him this scenario to see if Christ was going to do it according to the law. Well, now you got to know what the law of adultery is to see why this story has nothing to do with it, about forgiveness. Let's go to the law, Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 10. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10. And the man that committed adultery with another man's wife, even he that committed adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer, the adulteress, shall surely be put to death. Both the adulterer and the adulteress, both must be put to death. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 22. If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So thou put away evil from Israel. Very important. You have to understand the laws. They brought Christ a fictitious scenario to see if he was going to judge according to the law. The law states there has to be a trial. If a woman is found in adultery, she must have the accuser, which is her husband, present at this trial, the man she's accused of sleeping with at this trial, and her herself. Now, in this story in John chapter 8, nobody was there but the woman. Not the husband who accused her, not the man she was slept with or accused of sleeping with. Because if they were, then Christ could have gave a proper judgment according to the law. This was a made-up scenario. Christ wasn't falling for it. That's why he said he bent down and wrote, and he turned around and looked, and he saw only the woman present. He turned around and said, you guys got to do better than that. You can't trick me with this made-up scenario. Where's the woman's husband? Where's the man she's accused of sleeping with? Because they both have to be put to death according to the law. That's why when you read John chapter 8, you see nothing about forgiveness. Jesus said, where are those that accuse you? Where are those who condemn you? Where's all the parties that are involved? She said, I have none. Then Christ said, I don't condemn you either. Why? Because in a court of law, you're innocent until proven guilty. Even if you're guilty, if there's no one there to go against you, if there's no witnesses, they cannot find you guilty. Christ kept the law. He judged the woman properly. This is not hard to understand. We can't add on to it and try to make something or ascribe something to Christ in every scenario that doesn't take place. This is not about forgiveness. This is about the Pharisees trying to trick Christ with a scenario if he was the Messiah, if he was going to judge properly according to Moses, according to what's written. That's why I said they tempted him, so they can accuse him of not going according to the law. The law states all parties must be present. That's it. It's not hard to understand. That's why Christ said nothing about forgiving the woman. He just said, go away and sin no more. Shows you two things. Even if she was guilty of it, Christ couldn't have passed judgment because the other parties who's supposed to be present were not there. So he said, sin no more. Or it's simply that woman was in sin because she was complicit in that trickery that they were trying to put on him. I hope this brings understanding so many of you can stop teaching or believing things that are not in the book. Yes, Christ is the Messiah. Yes, he did many miracles. Yes, he preached forgiveness, love of the brotherhood, but everything he did didn't center around forgiveness. You cannot attribute forgiveness with John chapter 8 with the woman accused of adultery. That's irresponsible with the text. You must go by what the law says it is. That's why they brought him that very scenario to begin with. All right, guys. I hope this has been helpful for you to understand. The woman that's accused of adultery in John chapter 8 had nothing to do with her actually committing adultery according to the law. But this, I bid you a great day. One love.